Hey everyone, Gamer here, and today I'll be just doing a quick tier list for Hearthstone expansions. And it's going to be very subjective. It's going to be based on how I enjoyed playing during the given meta and its impact afterwards. So, pure opinion. But also as a quick update, my hands are still in not so good of a state. So pretty much I'm still not doing speedrunning. I'm still not playing too many video games. So sorry about lack of uploads and stuff. It's just yeah, health is obviously more important than video games to me. So it is what it is. All right, let's get started. And first of all, Ashes of Outland. I think this is just an unlucky starting point. I think the big issue with Ashes of Outland was the release of Demon Hunter polarized the wild and standard meta completely. And especially in wild, the stats didn't back up how much play Demon Hunter was seeing. It wasn't a tier 1 deck, and yet it was all over the place. I think Demon Hunter felt especially bad to play against because of the initiate set, not the expansion cards themselves. But during this expansion era, it felt like Demon Hunter could answer anything. It was clearly the most broken, most unfun at least class, and it dominated the meta play rate wise. And it just felt really, really unfun to play against. Had to get like 5 nerfs just to even be in a good spot. It was still strong. So because of that, I think the experience of the expansion itself was completely ruined. And then after that, the expansion itself didn't actually have that much impact. Like Darkler saw playing and 2 primes saw playing well, and that's pretty much it. No other big cards came out of Ashes of Outland. I also have the cards list open to run through them. I guess the discard 3 card was big, like the Hound of Gul'dan, but aggro discard Warlock isn't what we refer to as good impact for the game, right? So I think this was overall a very bad experience of Hearthstone, and definitely takes D tier. Next we have Black Rock Mountain. For the record, I did not play back during the Black Rock Mountain meta, so I don't know what Patreon Warrior felt like to play against. So I'll just go off the legacy of this set mostly. Emperor Thrishin, the best combo enabler. You love to see it till today. It's just a fun card. I wouldn't say it's the most fun card to play against, but I think as a Hearthstone player who plays so many different decks, I just do appreciate this card at the end of the day. Patrons are cool. I didn't get to play them in their prime, but at the end of the day, I still think it's pretty cool thing. You had Dark Iron Skulker, pretty great card. I will say Resurrect and Flamewaker were in this set, and that's pretty much the real legacy of this set in my opinion. So I can't really place it that high because of those 2 cards. I feel like it would be around the B tier, but just because how much of a terrible effect Resurrect and Flamewaker have had on the meta and how unfun decks that include them are to play against. I just have to place it high C. I might move it up. I'll do some final ordering afterwards, but I just can't place it higher. Next Rammus. Once again, I didn't play back when Next Rammus was out, but I do have a very positive opinion of it. I think Zombie Chow was a great tempo card. I'm a really big tempo person. I think Dancing Swords were great for mill decks back then. I love egg decks, so there's that. Sludge Belcher actually was around when I started playing in certain decks, so that was cool. I actually kind of like Loatheb, so I think Loatheb's a pretty interesting card. And then stuff like Death's Bite, Void Caller, Poison Seeds. I love playing Control Warrior, Control Warlock, and then control-ish but combo-ish Druid decks. So for me personally, this set has a lot of cards that I play daily. And after all these years, the fact that a lot of these cards I still play, I think is pretty cool. And I think the legacy of this set is pretty interesting. And something I have done is play the adventure itself. And I think the adventure was pretty good. So I'll definitely put a Curse of Nextramus in A. I think it was a really, really great experience. And while I can't comment on the meta back then, I can comment on my experience with it. And it was a great experience. Galakrond's Awakening, I also think is really good. really good set, right? I think the quest support was really fun, like the adventurer, and then like Crag, I think was a great card. And they don't see too much play anymore, but I'm a fan of Quest Mage nowadays. Now that it's no longer like super broken, I actually like enjoy playing like Reno Quest Mage and stuff. And those cards are pretty fun of it. You have the amazing Reno for Mage, really fun, um, really fun card. And then you just generally have like Risky Skipper as a control warrior player, obviously one of my favorite cards of all time. Um, I will say the impact of this set is not too lasting, but it also didn't shake up the meta, I guess, as much as people had wished when it came out, just because of how prevalent some Galakron decks were. But I'll definitely place it like high B tier. I think it was pretty good, and it has had a pretty good impact. So not too bad. And then we move on to Descent of Dragons itself, which I actually think is an amazing set, I will say. You have so many things in this set. From a vanilla 1-mana 2/2, you have the 5 Galakrons, which I think are some of the best, like in the long run decks, right? Because when they came out in Standard, they were pretty strong. But in Wild, like to this day, they still see play without being broken. Like you'll see Galakron Shaman still sees play, Galakron Warrior still sees play. Like, even though it doesn't right now, like for a while, like you had like Reno Galakron Rogue, you could just add in like the Priest Galakron to value decks without even needing the support for it. Like there was just a lot going on with the Galakrons, and I think this was a pretty great set. Like the Discover Dragons were pretty fun cards, right? Like 3-mana, 2/3s, Discover a Dragon. Those are great cards. Flick was in this set, like Stowaway for like scamming, Necrium Apothecary for scamming. Like overall, I think this was like a really fun set, and it's had a great lasting impact, even with things like Egg Galakron, Warlock, and it doesn't feel broken. Like a lot of the cards from this set see play, but they don't see play in like tier 1 wild decks. They see play in like maybe like sometimes tier 2, but mostly tier 3, tier 4 wild decks, which means they're very healthy, very fun, and yeah, absolutely amazing set. It doesn't make S though, because I think the sets I've kind of already decided what makes S, and I just think they're better. Like this is a fantastic set, but there's just stuff that's better than this, I guess. I will say though, shoutouts to Grizzled Wizard for giving us the combo. If you know, you know. Forged in the Barrens, I thought that was a pretty mess set. I will say, wasn't too exciting for me, especially as a wild player. Pretty much like very few cards saw play, and the ones they did, like Conviction, were kind of annoying, right? Like you had things like Zyrella, which looked as very interesting cards, but they just never picked up. Shaman getting like a poison board clear like also felt like really unfun. So the set wasn't bad though. There were a lot of fun concepts you could do with it. They were just all bad, and thus like they just saw no play, right? Like there's so many, like the whole like taunt package with Druid looked very interesting, but then just like ended up being bad. And like half the Druid cards were dedicated to that package, and instead people just run like regular Druid like aggro decks. So it is what it is. Token Druid technically did benefit, but it was just not as impactful as I would have wanted it to be in Wild, and like there is no lasting impact because like this was our most recent expansion. So I'll definitely place it in high C though. I don't think it was that bad. I will say I think the mini set was a lot better. You had like Kresh, Asterisk after Stealer of Souls was banned. You had like Kresh, Great Control Warrior card. You had the Shaman support, Dungeoneer, the 1-mana 1/3 Elemental. Very small set, but I think like overall it ended up being pretty cool. I think if you complain about Lady and a Contra, like that deck isn't even tier 1. Like you can also still run like classic version of Aviana combo, and it's pretty much the same matchup spread. Like I don't understand why people complain about Anaconda too much. It's just a different way to set up your Druid combos. It's not better. So it's fun to just not have to go for the same combo anytime, if anything. And the Mage Freeze spells weren't the best, but I think this makes bottom of B. It was entertaining enough. Goblins versus Gnomes. I didn't play back then. I will say this outright. So I will judge this mostly based on its legacy, and its legacy is pretty bad. And what I mean by that is the legacy, except like Mal'Ganis, the legacy boils down to unfun cards. You have Ancestor's Call for Shaman, like big Shaman. You have like oil decks have sometimes been fun to play, but especially the weapon decks around now, they are like not fun to play against, right? You have Quartermaster in Odd Paladin, Muster for Battle in Odd Paladin. Like these are pretty much the big cards that come out from this set, and it's just they're just not fun to play against. I don't like, and then you also have like the aggro cards like Ship's Cannon and Mech Warper that have just been used either for like extremely aggressive decks or just for very like degenerate combos that are uninteractive and unfun to play against. So I think Goblins versus Gnomes like makes it pretty far down the list. I'll have to figure out which one's worse down here, and there might be another one joining them. So it is what it is. Classic Hearthstone, I will say this straight away. I'm just not a fan. I don't like the classic format of the game, and I've gotten to experience it now that it's an additional format. If I wanted a more classic style card game, I'd go play Yu-Gi-Oh! It's much better, in my opinion. As a regular card game, I think the great thing about Hearthstone is what you can do with keywords, especially in a digital environment. Things like Discover you can't really do in other games. So more around those lines, right? Like hero powers, like hero cards, quests, and so forth. I believe those types of cards are much better for Hearthstone, or like invoking Galakron, like buffing your Cthulhu. You can't do those things in regular card games, and I think that's where Hearthstone shines. And Hearthstone Classic had none of that. Hearthstone Classic was just a minion on minion combat. Pretty uninspiring in my opinion. It wasn't bad. I'm just personally not a fan of it. And then like most classic cards don't see play anymore. The ones that do end up being incredibly overpowered in unfun ways. Think Edwin, think like Antonidas combos, think cheating out Mage Secrets. Those are cheating out mana and Mage with the 3/2 Apprentice. Just cards that were so broken that they're just played for because they're broken, which is not a fun reason for a card to survive the test of time. Journey to Un'Goro, though, I think is actually a pretty good set. I'll probably end up placing it in A tier, but I think quests were a great addition to Hearthstone. But the thing is, this set didn't just come with quests. It also came with, first of all, Elise the Trailblazer, one of my favorite value cards of all time. I think it's such a cool and fun card. It came with the elemental packages, which for a while were really good packages in standard, like from warrior to like tempo rogue to then just like firefly being good overall. You had Sarajin Corpse Flower. You just had a lot of fun cards. I will say where this faltered is kind of like Warlock, for example. Like not everything was too successful, but I think this makes mid A just because discard Warlock might not have been great, but most and like big attack Druid wasn't either. But most of the cards introduced here were very fun at the time, and while they haven't had the largest lasting impact in 2021, the elemental package especially had a lasting impact for a few years, and it was just so great. Like now, none of these cards see play. Like Open the Gateway Gate maybe does, and like a card or two, like Lost in the Jungle maybe. But I think just because of how impactful this set was for so long, and how fun a lot of these cards were, because most of the cards here were fun, right? Like you had like Mimic Pot Hallucination for Rogue to just do miracle plays. You had like pretty much the whole like copying and guessing. Priest, like the Glimmer Root. Spectred Siege was a pretty good card. Like Tarim ran in like Paladin for the longest time. And then like Mage like Arcanologist is actually run till this day. And Secret Mage, like there was so much fun you could do. Like Jeweled Macaw for Hunter. It's just cards people liked to run for a long time. And while they have been power crept out of the game, it was still a great experience for a long part of my Hearthstone playtime. So just makes it up here. Knights of the Frozen Throne, S tier, 100%. I won't even like question this. Pretty much my favorite set of the game. Nothing's gonna be placed above this, by the way. The princes were all great legendaries. I know like some people complain that like Valinor was weaker, but they were all great idea, great deck restriction building, right? Like, oh, just have no 2-cost cards and then you get this effect or something, right? I think the Lich King was a pretty cool legendary, definitely not the best. I even think like the epics, many of the epics in this set were actually decent. Like what you had like Nerubian Unraveler, which is like a much more balanced version of Loetheb. You had Geist coming in to just stop the Jade Druid epidemic. I mean, you had an Ultimate Infestation, which was very broken on release, but definitely a very memorable card. Simulacrum, which enabled like the Mage OTK. Like Obsidian Statue, arguably not a good epic, very unfun to play against. And then of course, my favorite card in the game, Dead Man's Hand, got introduced in this set. Control Warrior player, Dead Man's Hand. Warrior especially, you had like Blood Razor, Forge of Souls, all these big warrior cards coming out this set. But I mean, for any class, like the Death Knights, I will get to the Death Knights. The Death Knights were amazing. The great thing about this set is that if you play any class, this set was important to you. You play Warlock, wow, you have Defile, Dreadlord, even Numferatu, and then you get, of course, like Gul'dan, Bloodreaver Gul'dan, the hero card. Like, the hero cards saw play in every class to some extent, right? And many of them still see play today, and even if they don't, you can still make like a tier 3 deck that includes them in Wild. Because the hero cards are just that good. But they're not overpowered, that's the thing. They're not impactful enough to where they completely break the game, but they're good enough to where they're fun to play and they can always like make it through the test of time. So while yes, like there were some failures like Freeze Shaman, overall, like this set was amazing for pretty much every class, and especially the classes I played and I enjoyed. The meta back then was really fun. Tempo Rogue is probably one of my favorite decks of all time. Pirate Warrior deserved a nerf, but it was still pretty fun in Standard. And then like the lasting wild effect as a control player, Garrosh, Dead Man's Hand, like Gul'dan, Defile, all those cards. I am 100% big fan of them. And this is even in my Aviana decks I run Malfurion, right? Like this is such a good set. I love this set, and I definitely think it's the best set Hearthstone has ever had. I wouldn't say like I perhaps wouldn't say like peak Hearthstone occurred during this set, but this was the peak set of Hearthstone in terms of card additions. Similarly, I know this is very controversial, Cobbles and Catacombs right behind it, the set right after, actually. This set, to me, just introduced pretty much some of my other favorite cards of all times. Like, if we just run through it, Oaken Summons, Branching Paths for Druid, like, Spellstone, I literally play Togwaggle Druid. I run these cards today. Togwaggle himself, my favorite combo piece, introduced in this set. Right? Like Hunter, Spell Hunter, the only archetype of Hunter I enjoy playing, introduced in Kobolds, right? What else? What else did we have? I mean, Warlock, I won't even like spend too much time on Warlock, but Warlock, literally every single Warlock card printed in this set saw significant play in a high tier deck at some point, and like half of them still see play today at like very high tier decks. So it's just an amazing set for Warlock, especially control archetypes of Warlock. Warrior got some good cards here as well. Nothing too crazy, but it was also some really fun Warrior cards. Overall, it was just such a fun set. The cards here back then were considered power creep, but now are just so impactful, and they define so many archetypes that you can still play today. Like Spellhunter isn't good nowadays, but it's still very fun. And it's still playable because of cards that existed back in Cobbles and Catacombs. And I understand that when the meta came out in Standard especially, it wasn't the most fun meta for many players. But at the end of the day, the lasting impact of Cobbles and Catacombs is incredibly positive and definitely shaped the game in a very good direction. Dark Moon Fair. Dark Moon Fair is an interesting one. I don't have like too hot of an opinion on it. I kind of like the idea of bringing back the Old Gods. As you'll see, I have the original Old Gods set. I'm going to rate it pretty high. I'm not sure exactly where, but definitely S or A. So I really like the idea of bringing back Whispers of the Old Gods, but I think the execution was kind of weird. Like we got this OTK Demon Hunter coming out. That's pretty much one of the big things that came out of it. Like Secret Mage got more support, which ended up being very unfun. Odd Paladin got a new annoying card, well, 2 new annoying cards, and Oh My Yogg and like Carnival Barker. And it's just like, Big Priest got more support, right? And then like cool cards like Gahoon ended up not seeing play. Like even the rogue cards that came out, I will say as a rogue player myself, I find them annoying. I don't like them. I think they're terrible to play against. Like Foxy Fraud, basically a 0 mana 3/2. So it's just like I feel like this set just was not fun. Because while the 4 odd gods, I'll get to them themselves, were pretty fun, like Ticketus, super unfun to play against. Right, like ETC just caused OTK combos. So yeah, the 4 old gods themselves, I think, were remade into something really, really fun. But I don't think that everything else was fun. I think literally everything else around the set just ended up being very unfun for the game if it lasted, right? The corrupt mechanic was cool, but it pretty much saw no play outside of like clowns. And then it's just like, okay, you're left with tons of toxic and unhealthy cards for the game, and then like 4 cool cards in the old gods, because they actually like hit the old gods spot on. But then the old gods were like balanced. So the main focus of the set didn't even go back to the old gods, because the old gods were well designed cards. They were at a good power level, but they just couldn't compete with all these new unfun mechanics that were introduced and support for decks that people have historically found to be uninteractive. And a lot of these decks, nearly a year later, were like about 8 months later, still see serious play in Wild. So like Odd Paladin, Big Priest, like the support that came for them, this set has definitely kept them alive for a really long time. So, I don't want to put Darkmoon Faire too low, because I know I spoke very negatively about it, but at the end of the day, I do enjoy the old god cards, and that's what this set was about. Most of the other cards ended up not being very healthy in retrospect, but I put it above Forged and the Barons because at least there were like four cards in the old gods that were entertaining, and that in a way it has had an impact, if anything, in the Wild metagame. And then the mini set, though, I think is a completely different story. The mini set introduced like Crab Rider, Armor Vendor, like insane cards, like Illidari Studies. Arbor Up is a thing that made Token Druid not that fun, but like yeah, you also had Mana Biscuit for Mage. But overall, you had a lot of like cool cards, like Backfire. I think is a great card. Rustwix, like Ironclad. I remember people running like Odd Tempo Warrior. I think overall there were some pretty great cards: Barricade, Hysteria, Keyword and Ivory, and like Nitro Boost Poison was also here. But the point with the mini set is I definitely place it a bit higher than Darkmoon Faire, just because it kind of, I think, broke the broken card idea that Darkmoon Faire introduced and the broken support that it brought in. And I think that's why people have a very positive opinion of the Darkmoon Faire. The mini set kind of like saved the expansion, introducing very cool new cards that weren't broken, but they were still like useful. They still saw play. They still see play. Yeah, I thought it was overall a very great experience. So it's not insane or anything. It still suffers from similar issues like the Darkmoon Faire itself, but it definitely brings in some cool cards to make it into B tier. Mean Streets, on the other hand, what an expansion. So for Mean Streets, I will try to summarize this because I have a very strong opinion on this set. The thing is, like 95% of this set is completely terrible, completely unimpactful, either memes or cards that never see play at all in the first place. The thing is, the 5% of this set that is impactful completely shaped Hearthstone and changed the direction the game would go in, right? Like, we're talking about Jades and Kuhn was introduced in the same set. We're talking about, like, Cabal Lackey and Cabal Crystal Runner, like, pushing Secret Mage, like, further than it should have ever been pushed, right? We're talking about Raza the Chained, enabling pretty much the best combo, even though it's like not an OTK combo, but like Razakas being one of the best, strongest decks in the history of Hearthstone. It was tier 1 from like 2017 all the way till today. The only period it was not tier 1 was like a half a year period where it was nerfed, but then they reverted the nerf. So it's like it would have still been tier 1 if the nerf hadn't gone through. And then you also have like Kazakus. But then the thing is, it also patches one of the most aggressive cards ever released, but it got nerfed, so it's not that good anymore. Even though I still think it's pretty good, it's nowhere near as oppressive as it was. Except the cards I mentioned, and maybe like Mark of the Lotus, seeing like occasional play in like token decks or something. Every other card has pretty much had no impact. All the hand buff cards failed miserably. All the legendaries had no impact. Like Beardo, after you cast a spell, refresh your hero power. Like what? Like that sees play in like 1 ODK in the history of Hearthstone. Literally only one deck in like how many years now? Like nearly 5 years now has played this card. Surge and Sally, no decks have ever played it. Genzo the Shark, literally no decks have ever played it. Madame Goya, like I didn't even remember this was a card. Mayor Noggin Foggers just exists for memes. Weasel Tunneler just exists for memes. I guess Dirty Rat is also significant in this expansion. I kind of missed out on that, but that just reinforces the point where there's like one good card for every like 10 to 12 bad cards. And the good cards are incredibly influential, and then the bad cards are just unplayable. 2 mana, 2/2, restore 2 health, yeah. So this set, very polarizing set, just because of that, to get to my rating. I don't think that's a good thing for Hearthstone. I think it's definitely worse than Blackrock Mountain. I don't think, even though some cards were broken, I don't see that as a positive. I see that as a negative. I think this has had one of the worst effects on the evolution of Hearthstone, and still, like, a lot of the broken cards from this set hurt the game till this day. One Night in Karazhan. I think this set's definitely very interesting. It was never the most like high impact set, but for what it's worth, a lot of the cards saw play, and they were never completely broken, with the exception of Barnes. But even then, Barnes also saw play in healthy decks like Tempo Rogue. So I think the big shoutouts that had impact were Medivh. Medivh actually saw more play than expected. It's pretty amazing. Saw play from like decks like Big Spell Mage to Starline or Druid. I don't think people were expecting Medivh to have such an impact on Hearthstone, and yet it never felt broken, because it's like he would always sneak his way into these random decks, but not for his like intended purpose. So he never fell out of line. Barnes definitely enabled. Big Priest, a lot of people hate Barnes because of that, but it is what it is. Prince Malzahar, like, just a fun card. So nothing crazy there. I think Netherspite Historian for Dragons was good. Arcane Giant sees play as a very fun card. You have Valyra Vanish Giants deck. Really enjoyable deck. Not really broken, just really fun. I will say Medivh's Valet is kind of broken, still like plagues the meta with Secret Mage to this day. But cards like Swashbuckler, which is defined, Rogue 1 drops, you had Maelstrom Portal to just be a good anti-aggro card. Malzahar's Imps were okay at first. Now they're a bit stronger with all the discard support that has come out after so many years, but same thing with Silverware. At the end of the day, it's not those cards that are the problem, it's the new discard support. So I actually think, I can't believe it, but I wasn't expecting to do this. Karazhan actually drops in B tier. Like, it's reviewing it, it's actually a really fun set, and nothing here. Like, even Barnes, like, yeah, Barnes saw like very toxic and Big Priest, but he also like was played in other decks for like the 4 mana 4/5 with like some cheated effect, which was much more balanced and actually enjoyable in my opinion, in like Tempo Rogue. So, like, pulling out a Lich King, yeah, it's a 1 mana Lich King, not bad. 1/1 though, so I think Karazhan was actually pretty fun. I can't believe I'm putting it above Darkmoon Faire and Barons, but yeah, I'll definitely reorder some things at the end of the video. Rastakhan's Rumble, probably like the most hated expansion by the community. They said it was the most low impact, but I actually disagree. I think this expansion was pretty fun. And I mean, to kind of elaborate, I don't think it was strong. Yes, the power level of these cards was weak, especially because of it followed up Boomsday. So I think it was fun though, right? Let's run through the cards, right? Like Sarah Knight Taskmaster is like Zombie Chow. It's just a cool tempo one drop. Ankle Biter saw more play than I believe anyone could have imagined. Still sees play in Dark Glare, right? Like the Turtle, the deal 5 damage to your hero, 3 mana 3/5. That's a bit play of in Odd Paladin. It was a choice card. It was a tech card, right? You had like big beast stuff with Amani Warbear and Undasta. None of these were broken. They were just available for fun. Like Linecracker created a new fun combo. Was it ever like a high tier deck? No, but it was still something you could do for fun. Zehi was a bit toxic and like even Warlock, but beyond that didn't see too much play. But yeah, Hakar just once again created fun ways to kill your opponent. Gonk for Druid just created once again a fun new combo. I mean, War Druid Lodi was pretty good, but never popped off because it competed in the 4 mana slot for summons. But like you just have cards like Springpaw, which actually still sees some play in Hunter. Zul'jin still sees some play in Wild for fun. And yeah, none of these decks were ever like insanely powerful or anything. Shrivala combos existed. It was just Sion still sees play in Priest, Mass Hysteria still sees play in Priest. Right? I'm just running through this list and it's like, yeah, Captain Hookdust saw some fringe play in fun pirate decks. Right? None of these cards ever like completely broke the meta or just created unfun situations or made tier 1 decks, but like the dragon support for warrior actually was pretty good, especially in the next few expansions. I think Rastakhan's Rumble honestly just makes B tier, and I know people are like, what? But the expansion was so bad. Yeah, the cards weren't strong, but it just had so many. It just created so many fun new ways to play decks, and they weren't strongest. They never made like high tier ratings, but they were fun. And at the end of the day, I think that's a big part of why you play card games. You play card games to have fun, and this expansion did have some fun cards. Ah, Rise of Shadows. Okay. For what it's worth, I will rank this set very specifically, even though it has some of my favorite cards, including like Archivist Elysiana, Geppetto. Those are like really cool cards in my opinion. It has Caligos, which I thought was nice. The dragons are cool. Madame Lazul is cool. I think the best way to put it, I also did enjoy Darkest Hour for the record, is that this set power crept the game very hard. And this set is responsible for a major issue in Hearthstone. This set introduced lackeys, which offered a lot of random generation to pretty much most classes. And it introduced so much random to the game while also introducing some power creep cards that it felt to beat this set in standard, you had to power creep the game even more. It's also so insane that lackeys don't see play in Wild anymore. So because of that, it just like I think moved Hearthstone in a direction that wasn't healthy for the game as a set. And while there's many individual cards that were really fun and I really enjoyed playing, to just sum up this set, like most of these cards don't see play anymore, but they significantly changed Hearthstone at the time as to how it was played and forced players to move to more like in Wild, if you didn't want to get outvalued, you just had to start mana cheating so hard. So you ended up like playing all the mana cheat decks and cheat as much mana as possible. Because otherwise, it was impossible to just not get outvalued, right? So, because it's like, you either play mana cheat, like Darkest Hour, summon a full board on turn 6, or you just get outvalued because your opponent just infinitely generates cards, and it just created a very unfun Hearthstone environment. For that reason only, this makes D tier. Even though a lot of these cards I consider fun on a casual standpoint, the effect they ended up having in the long run in Hearthstone was very, very negative, and really pushed the game in what I consider to be an unhealthy direction. And it all started with this expansion. It's not exclusively because of Rise of Shadows, but Rise of Shadows kind of started like a chain reaction about how Hearthstone changed. Saviors of Uldum. I think this is a pretty bad set. The main appeal of this set was the return of the quests, but there was a main issue with the return of the quests. This time, instead of giving you rewards, they changed your hero power into something new. The problem with that is that's not a fun reward. You waste your first turn, and then your reward isn't immediate pressure as well. So a lot of the times you just complete your quest and then still lose. Not that quests should equal game wins, but because there was no instant tempo provided by upgrading a hero power, and usually to get values of hero power you need to use it many turns in a row, the quest just felt underwhelming. You needed to go out of your way, because quests require you to go out of your way to complete a specific task, and then when you complete the specific task, you just also need to go spend more turns clicking on your hero power to gain value out of it, and that's just not realistic in modern Hearthstone. None of the quests saw real play in WoW. I think in standard, the Druid quest saw some play or something. But yeah, I guess Priest quests saw some play in big decks, but more as an additional thing. And then nowadays you use Corrupt the Waters for Shadow Rock combos. It is what it is, but it's just uninteractive because even if you do complete your quest, your opponent cannot interact with your reward in the case of Corrupt the Waters. It's just very unfun. Zephyrus is a very interesting card introduced in this set. I actually think it's one of the best designed cards, but I also have changed my opinion on this card as time has passed. At first I thought it was it was an amazing card. Because I thought it was such a cool design. I still think the design is great. I've come to realize it's not the most fun thing to play against. Your opponent being able to answer anything you do with one card is actually not as healthy as it sounds for such a weak deck building restrictions. Nowadays, there's so many cards that no duplicates isn't really hard to pull off in any deck. So Siamat was a cool card, but it's no Ziliax. And then most of the other cards were inconsequential. You'll notice I haven't mentioned Reborn. Reborn ended up being a terrible mechanic. And you'll also notice I haven't mentioned any of the new Reno cards because pretty much none of them ended up seeing play in the long run. Maybe Reno, the Relicologist, sees playing some Reno Quest Mage or something. But it's just a big flop, I think, in the long run. And while there was some hype when the set came out, and a lot of these cards saw play during the set itself. Nowadays, you'll see a Cartoot Defender, and then you'll see Zephyrus all the time. But other than that, there's not too many things here worth talking about. If anything, actually, there's nothing to talk about in this set. Yeah. So, very underwhelming set. I think it also falls in C tier, definitely below. Well, I think it goes above Blackrock because there's some things in here, but not enough. Scalamen's Academy. I will say it right now, I hate the flavor of this set. And the reason I hated the flavor of this set is because they set out to make an academy themed set, a school academy themed set. Most of these cards have nothing to do with a school academy. They create a dungeon underneath the school or something. Half the cards are related to the dungeon underneath the school. The other half cards are like wild animals or wild beasts. What are those doing in an academy? Who knows? Yeah, it's just I feel like they really missed the theme with this one. I was super excited to have Hearthstone in an academy environment, but they just really missed out on the flavor. I really believe that. Dual class cards, I guess, were nice, but they either ended up being incredibly broken in one class, or just saw no play. Bear of, again, control warrior player. I love my Bear of. Rogue player, I love my Jandis. I play Aviana Druid, love my Lightning Bloom, but Like, when was the last time you saw like Shaman utilizing Lightning Bloom effectively, right? Like, so much for having dual class cards. I thought it was pretty bad. And I think it would have bugged me less if, like, yeah, for example, like the Warrior Legendaries Battlecore. What's a giant monster in a dungeon doing in a school-themed expansion? I think they really missed the mark with the theme on this one. Or at least they didn't convey it as they should have, right? Like, they could have said like Scalamen's dungeon, because you have like Scalamans and a dungeon or something. Like, the fact that you portray this as an academy expansion and then like pretty much the majority of the cards are like dungeon related or beasts and stuff, it's definitely let me down. But the actual cards themselves were decently impactful. None of them were completely broken, right? None of these. In Standard, they definitely reshaped Standard, but I think in Wild, which is what I mostly play nowadays, especially when this expansion came out, they were all great additions to their respective decks. I know it doesn't seem like it, but sneaks into B tier in my opinion. It's definitely better than these. I might end up moving Dark Moonfare up one or something. We'll see. But yeah, have to finish the video eventually. Boomsday. I'll place it now. It's definitely A tier. We'll see where in A tier. But the Boomsday project, a really cool expansion. I really liked the mechs. I really liked stuff like Giggling Inventor after the balance patch was good. Mechathune was an amazing alternate win condition, never felt broken. Zaliax, one of the best designed cards of all time. Yeah, all the schools got like some cool spell to play with, and there was just a lot of fun cards in this set. And there was also like as a control warrior player, right? Like got like Dr. Boom, we got Super Collider, Eternium Rover, Weapons Project, Dinomatic, like all of these cards. Like Warlock didn't get too much, but Warlock got Solarium. Like I think that's a great card, right? Every school got something, and I think it wasn't like nothing was broken, right? Like Thunderhead for Shaman was a good card. Like Myra's Unstable Element doesn't even see play anymore in Rogue, but it was a very, very thematic card for Rogue, like Academic Espionage, right? Priest had this really cool cloning gallery OTK combo that was like really sick to pull off. You had APM Priest with the boars and test subject. Like I think all of those are just fun combos. None of these broke the meta. Like probably the most toxic card in he's like Prismatic Lens, but like that ended up breaking the meta like a few years after for Paladin. But overall, it was a very, very fun set, and I think this does go above Ungoro, probably here actually. Yeah, it was a very fun set. All the cards got like things. Sorry, all the classes got cards to play with, and it was overall fun. I don't think anyone was left disappointed. Everyone had something they wanted to play, and it didn't break the meta. So, really, really, really successful set, regardless of which class you enjoy playing. The Grand Tournament, once again, I didn't play during this era. I only know this set from its impact on the game. It's a relatively low impact set. Fun fact, look up Master of Ceremonies. It's a card I didn't even know existed until like a few weeks ago. Probably the only card in Hearthstone that I didn't know existed. So, that's a pretty fun fact. Aviana was introduced in this set. And I'm pretty sure that's like the legacy of the set, if anything. Like, Mysterious Challenger was good years ago, but it's not good anymore. Like, you have Spawn of Shadows used in a very degenerate combo nowadays, and like, that's pretty much it. Like, Totem Golem, there's like nothing here. So, I will have to give this a bad rating, but it's better than Rise of Shadows. It just doesn't have a lot, but at least it wasn't harmful to the game. So. League of Explorers, very, very small set. The adventure was decently fun, but beyond that, it is what it is. Finley, Bran, and Reno still see play. Pretty much every other card from this set just isn't played anymore, which is depressing. So, is it worth a rating an expansion highly because 3 of its cards see play? Normally, I'd say no. But this will sneak in to C tier. Definitely above Gadget's End, but yeah, here I think is the best place. And the only reason I say this is because especially Reno is such an influential card that just because Reno sees play, like this expansion is important. Like the three explorers that see play have impacted Hearthstone so much, and they see so much play in so many decks, and the expansion is based on them, that it's like I think they do have a very strong lasting effect, and in many ways it is because of this expansion that those specific cards exist thematically. And just because of that, I think the set is notable enough. Also noteworthy that the cards that don't see play are also pretty fun cards you could realistically include in decks for fun. So, Hearthstone Witchwood. This is probably going to be my most controversial opinion because it is based purely on personal enjoyment of the game. The Witchwood is one of my favorite sets, even though it's one of the sets that people claim broke Hearthstone the most. Even though I will argue only 2 cards in this set actually were the problem, Baku and Gen. I'll leave those for last, but let's take a look at the set without Baku and Gen first, right? You have stuff like Rotten Applebomb, amazing control card, Hench Clan Thug, pretty cool weapon aggro card. Life Drinker, pretty cool card. Witchwood Grizzly, great anti-aggro card. Mossy Horror, great anti-aggro card, right? Like, you have Countess Ashmore, great value card. Azalina Soul Thief, great combo and value card, right? Witching Hour, one of the coolest cards ever printed, in my opinion, thematically. You just have all the mage support, like Book of Specters, all that stuff. Really, really cool cards, and you could use them for aggro, or you could use them in like a Reno quest deck, and it still works. You have Tess, really fun card. You have Shutterwalk, potentially really fun card, now has devolved into not so fun combos, right? Like Warlock has Lord Godfrey, one of the best control cards. Warrior, big rush synergy starts here. Warpath, great control card. So overall, I think like there's a lot of great cards in this set. But then like, what's the issue? Odd and even decks, which were really broken when they first came out in Standard, but let's be real, they have a place in the meta now. Like, nowadays, odd and even decks don't define wild, surprisingly. It's somehow settled where even though there's more and more cards, odd and even decks aren't getting stronger. So, they found a great spot. You see stuff like even Hunter just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, wow. I also think Gen and Baku can help you make like fun decks more viable. Like, you want to play Miracle Rogue, like just play even Miracle Rogue to just make it a bit better since the deck sucks in the first place, right? Like, oh, the new expansion's gonna come out, Stormwind, with Quest Druid, the new quest line. Just play odd quest line Druid, right? That's gonna be fun. Like, I think you can just create so many like fun decks at the end of the day with Gen and Baku, right? Like Blink Fox is also a card too. Just amazing set overall. I know people disagree with this, but I will also say it's the most fun I've had in a day one of an expansion. Theory crafting decks and like playing like Tempo Rogue, and like Control Warlock day one of the expansion with the new cards before the meta settled in Standard. Probably the most fun I've ever had in Standard. Alright, Whispers of the Old Gods. I believe this is like usually people's favorite expansion. That's pretty good. This is my order for S tier, by the way. Amazing expansion, very cool thematic, bringing back old cards but make them like evil, and they have something different. The Old Gods were very flavorful cards, really fun to play. And while a lot of them are outdated, this expansion's just so fun that even though only a few cards see play nowadays, it's just so fun. When these cards saw play and when you could play these cards, they're just so fun that it's just really good design. And this is what it's all about. I think this is a great example of good design in a game. They did get power corrupt though, which is why it's not higher. Like, basically most of these cards see like no play anymore, except like N'Zoth and Yashiraj. So yeah, I mean, I'll just sort. I kind of like the order for most of these because I was placing them in order. I think I'll probably move it like this. I think Darkwind fares a bit better. Yeah, that looks good. Do I like the mini set order? Yeah, Rastakhan's. I think Rumble's better than Karazhan. And then, yeah, I actually like the starter. Really great stuff. So, hey, you should follow me on Twitter, by the way. I don't know why it's advertising my Twitter here, but yeah. Yeah, that's my tier list. I hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Like most people, like these two. Most people definitely disagree for Cobalt and Witchwood, but it is what it is. Sometimes you take those, right? So yeah, I think this was a great list though. If you watched till the end, wow, I talked a lot. Thank you for watching till the end. That's crazy. I really appreciate you. And as I said, I'll try to get back to a better schedule with other videos when my hands are feeling better, but I don't know how long that will be. Yeah. Thanks for watching, y'all.